We've got room back here as well. We've got room here and here for students. All right, it's 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know that there's a few students and maybe some parents and community members and teachers who are still walking in to join us, but just feel free to find a seat. Find a seat where you match, the placemat matches who you are as a stakeholder and who you represent in the conversation. So good evening, everyone. My name is Diana Saavedra. I'm the superintendent of the El Paso Independent School District, and I want to welcome all of you here this evening, and thank you very much in advance for your time this evening. There's several of you who are pre-identified stakeholders from the Andress feeder pattern that I've asked the principals to identify, and for two reasons. The first reason is I wanted to guarantee attendance because I wanted to make sure that there was a true conversation with the community, not just with 2 or 3 people or maybe 20 people that showed up, but I wanted a guaranteed attendance from a variety of stakeholders. So the principals did a great job of identifying you all and asking you to join us for this conversation this evening. But at the same time, I opened the floor and I asked our principals to communicate to the broader community because we have a gallery seating area as well. So I want to welcome you that are in the gallery seating area because you all will also be able to participate in this evening's conversation. And then we're live streaming this, so anybody who's watching at home can also participate via live stream. So I'm really trying to cast a very wide net for this particular conversation. So again, welcome and thank you. This is the Andress Feeder Pattern Hopes and Dreams Listening Tour. And what do we mean by hopes and dreams, and why is it important for us to have this conversation? Well, before I get into some of the slides, I want to share with you that when we think about visioning for this school district and we think about what's possible for the future, it's important for us to do that together as a community because our schools belong to the community. There was a great mentor of mine who shared with me that as I was thinking about the superintendency, he said, don't ever forget, it's their schools, their money, their buildings, right? Their schools, their money, their kids. And so it's important when we think about our school system, when we think about the education that we want to provide for our children, that we all think about that collectively together. And when we think about that collectively together, that also translates into us committing together collectively to making sure that we deliver that education that we know is possible. So that's really the essence of what we're going to be doing together this evening. Now, put your thinking caps on because I'm going to ask you to do a little work for me today. And I'll show you how to use your technology in just a minute. But those of you who are in the gallery, all you need is your phone. Those of you who are watching live stream, if you have a tablet at home, if you have a phone, if you have a laptop, that's going to be a tool that you want to use this evening. And those of you who are here on the stage with me, if you need any technology in terms of an iPad, just raise your hand and we'll make sure that we get you one. Otherwise, you're very welcome to use your phone because you can use your phone and it's very easy to access what we're going to be accessing via your phone. But if you would prefer a larger screen on an iPad, raise your hand and we'll get you one. And I've got several helpers that'll swing around and help you. So as they're getting everybody situated, let's kind of just jump right in to this conversation today. All right, so 2 things that I want you to think about as we're thinking about the future of El Paso ISD. And you see, why hopes and dreams? Why are we using these 2 terms as we think about what we want for our students in terms of their education? So hope, first of all, let's define the word hope. What does the word hope mean? Well, it means a feeling or belief that something is possible. And dream refers to something that you've wanted for a very long time. And so when we think about what's possible for El Paso ISD, and when we have this conversation this evening and we engage together, I want you to keep these two terms in mind. What do you believe is possible, and what have you wanted for a very long time when you think about the education of your children, right? Or when we think about this as a community. So let me give you a little bit of background in terms of my philosophy and this idea of this hopes and dreams framework. Again, schools are community hubs, right? When we think about where we want to buy our houses, where we want to live, and our neighborhoods, a lot of what we think about is what is the quality of the school, and what kind of education is my child going to have. So with that in mind, as I said, it's important for us to engage in this conversation as a community. And as we engage in this conversation, what we're doing is we're visioning as a community. So you are part of this process. So, I know that I'm the superintendent of this school district, and it's my responsibility to execute any plan that we create. But executing is different than visioning, right? So I shouldn't be the sole visionary of what the plan should be. That should be a collective effort from all of us. And so that is kind of the place and the philosophy that I'm coming from, that this should be a community-based visioning process as we think about what's possible for our school district in the future. So what will this lead to? As we have this conversation this evening and several conversations to follow, what we're going to find is that we're going to be able to determine what are the community's priorities. And that is going to be from a district-wide lens, and also, I'm doing these as feeder patterns. I'm conducting 10 feeder pattern hopes and dreams listening tours. This is my fifth or my sixth? My sixth. Fifth. So I'm halfway through, right? I've done one at Burgess. I've done one at Coronado. I've done one at Irvin. I've done one at Austin High, and I've done one at Bowie. All right, and so this, it is my sixth one then, right? So this is my sixth listening tour. I have 4 more to go next week. And so as we gather this information collectively, what is it going to help us do? Well, it's going to help us, like I said, determine what are the priorities of the community. What do they want to see in the future for El Paso ISD in terms of their child's education? That's also going to lead to a strategic plan with specific goals that we want to accomplish as an organization. Because I'm going to take this information back to the Board of Trustees, and we'll begin to formulate what I call directional documents. And directional documents are mission, why do we exist? Vision, what do we hope to become? Our core beliefs and commitments, what do we value as an organization? And then goals. What do we want to accomplish, and how are we going to get there in terms of a strategic plan? So those are what I call visioning documents, and I will come back to you with those documents so that you all can continue to be part of the formulation of the goals and the strategic plan. And then there's something that I call a learner profile, because we all know that when our students graduate from El Paso ISD, from Andress High School, we want them to be equipped academically to compete. Everybody wants that for their child, right? But what else do they need to have? What else do they need to be equipped with so that they're ready to compete in a future or with jobs that we don't even know exist yet, right? We don't know exactly what the future's going to look like. The future creates itself very quickly nowadays. Things are invented very quickly. Our society doesn't move quite as slow as it used to in the past. So we're preparing kids for jobs that don't even exist yet. So what profile do we need to define in terms of our students? What attributes should they have when they graduate from high school, aside from being academically prepared? Because we know that it takes more than that, right? There's a lot of people skills, a lot of other attributes and skills that those of us who are adults and professionals and working in the world, in the workforce, we know that there's a lot of other skills that are just as important that we need to be thinking about. So learner profiles are also something that we'll have conversations about so that we can, kind of define what do we want our graduates to look like, feel like, sound like, when they graduate and leave us and go on for bigger and better things. All right, so like I said, we're going to engage in this community conversation so that as a superintendent working closely with the Board of Trustees, I can understand and we can understand what are the hopes and dreams of students for their future. That's why I have student stakeholders here, because student voice is very important to me as a superintendent. They're our end user. So if we leave them out of the conversation, then we're leaving out a major voice from the conversation. So we need to understand as an organization what students want for their future in terms of their education. Parents, you're also here sitting as stakeholders because you're important to the conversation. As parents, what do you want for your children in terms of their future and their education? Educators, you became an educator for a reason. Your voice is important in this conversation because what, as educators, do you want for your students in terms of their future and their education? And then community members, as I said, our neighborhoods thrive based on the quality of our schools. So as community members, what do you want for your neighborhood? And how does the school help you create that for the neighborhood, right? So community leaders, you're here because your voice is important. And we need the assets of the community to do what we need to do in the future for our children. And then as an entire audience, when we think collectively, all of us as a community in El Paso ISD, our voices collectively will help us figure out what the possibilities are for the future and the education of our children. So that's why we've been very strategic in terms of identifying all of these stakeholders to be engaged in this conversation. And again, those of you in the gallery and those of you who are watching live stream at home, you will also have an opportunity to engage in the conversation. And without going too far into the program, I do want to introduce Mr. Israel Arabali. He is our Board of Trustees member who represents this feeder pattern. Let's give him a round of applause. Because although he's an elected official, to be a board member of a school district is a huge job. And all of our board members volunteer. Even though they're elected, they volunteer their time. And it is a lot of time. It's like a second full-time job. There's a lot of information that they read. There's a lot of material that they have to mine through. They make some heavy, heavy decisions on your behalf. So I really appreciate the work that he does, and I appreciate his support and his partnership. So I felt like it was important for me to set the stage in terms of what we're trying to accomplish and the type of conversation we want to engage in this evening. So how are we going to do this efficiently, right? Well, we're going to use a platform that's called Thought Exchange. So let me tell you a little bit about how this platform works so that as we're using it, you understand how it's generating the information. So what we'll do this evening is we'll go through 2 rounds of exchanges, where you, as an audience in the gallery, as an audience live stream, and those of you who are here with me on the stage, will be able to generate thoughts in response to an open-ended question, all right? So those thoughts will be generated in the platform, and you'll be able to see all of the thoughts that people are generating, your thoughts, and then thoughts that others are generating. Then what you'll do is you'll go in and you'll rate those thoughts. You'll rate those thoughts. And those ratings will then assess which thoughts are earning the highest ratings, because then those become what we call the priority thoughts, right? Those are the thoughts that are connecting with everyone else, and as people are rating them, if they get higher ratings, that means that they're more important than maybe some of the other thoughts, right? And so you'll be able to rate any given thought on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being you don't really agree with it, it doesn't really resonate with you. 5 meaning that that's important to you, and so you're going to rate it high, right? And then I want you to know that it's very easy to use on the web. That's why you can use it with your phone, you can use it with a laptop, or you can use it with a tablet or an iPad. So those of you who are in the gallery, you'll be using your phones. Those of you who are watching live stream at home, whatever access to technology you have at home, you can use, and then whatever your preference is here on the stage, phone, tablet, or laptop. And I want to reassure you that this is anonymous, right? Whatever thought you put in there, nobody's going to be able to backtrack and say a teacher wrote that or so-and-so's parent wrote that. So I want you to feel free to generate the thoughts that are really going to help us shape the future of this school district, all right? So that's a little bit about the platform that we're going to be using. So before we get started with the thoughts and using the platform, I want to share with you that as a superintendent, I've been on the job now since January the 4th. And so it's only been a little over 4 months. And during that time, I've been visiting schools. And my goal is to visit all of our campuses within my first 100 days. So I'm about 3/4 of the way there. I have a few more schools to visit. And when I go to visit schools, I don't just walk the halls and sit in the principal's office. I actually walk into classrooms. I introduce myself to teachers. I engage in conversations with the students. And I want to know, from a student's perspective, what do you want me to know about your school? You know, what are you proud of? And, you know, so we engage in a conversation because I tell them, when I walk away from school, what do you want me to know? And they share a lot of really great insights with me as a superintendent. And I also, you know, engage with the teacher in the classroom, because obviously I'm walking in and interrupting their lesson, and they're probably saying, she needs to get out of here because I need to get through the curriculum, right? So in any event, but they're very gracious, and they allow me to interrupt their classrooms. But so I've had conversations with a lot of students, teachers. I have a teacher advisory council, and I've met with them twice already. I'm meeting again with them next week. And so they've had a lot of information to share with me in terms of the current reality of the school district. I've met with a number of different community members and community groups, and they've shared a lot of information with me as well. So as I've been engaging with the community and with stakeholders as part of my entry plan, here's what I already know about the school district, right? What I know is that we've been through some hard times as a school district, right? There's been, you know, we've had some rocky, you know, issues to deal with as a school district. So what I know as a superintendent is going to be something that is a high priority. That is that working together with the board and the administrative team and the staff as a whole, we're going to need to work really hard to restore the faith of the community back into the school district, right? Because I do believe that there's a level of credibility that we've lost, and there's some faith that is questioned. I mean, you know, some of you may question how confident you are in our ability to educate your children. So restoring the faith of the community in the school district is going to be something that's going to be a challenge for me, and something that we're going to have to work on as an organization. The other thing that you all need to know about our school district is, over the last decade, we've seen significant and consistent decline in enrollment, in student enrollment. And so another challenge that we'll need to overcome is stabilizing and reversing that decline in enrollment. How many of you, I mean, we're the oldest school district in El Paso County. We've been in existence for over 140 years. And our facilities on average are 50 years old. And so I started this conversation by saying that we don't even know what jobs will exist in the future. And we're preparing our children for a future we don't know everything about. And so learning spaces are important in terms of the educational process. And so a building that is 50 years old, that learning space looks very different than a modern learning space, right? I mean, if we're going to be honest, this is a beautiful and very modern fine arts facility and building. But if you go into the core building of Andress, the classrooms don't look so modern, do they? The furniture doesn't look very modern, right? So we've got some work to do with facilities, not only here at Andress, but across the school district, because there's schools that are not modern learning spaces, and we need to get there. Now that's going to be, a long-term goal for us, but it's something that we're going to have to address. So that is something that I already know about in terms of challenges that we face as a school district. And the other thing that I've heard quite a bit from parents, from students, and from teachers is that we need to de-emphasize high-stakes assessments. And what I mean by that is that I understand that our A through F accountability system is important because we need to meet the mark, but that's a minimum expectation. And if all of our practices are geared towards chasing that assessment, then we're shortchanging our children because they need more to be prepared for the future. So de-emphasizing high-stakes assessment, making sure that we meet that minimum expectation, but really working for more for our children. So these are the things that I already know, just in the few months that I've been here and the informal conversations that I'm having with stakeholders. The other thing that I did in preparation for these Hopes and Dreams listening tours is we sent out what I call a pre-listening session question. And we did that for two reasons. Number one, I wanted to push that out so that the community could get used to using the Thought Exchange platform, right? Because it gave you instructions on how to go in there and put in some thoughts. So that was one reason that I sent it out a couple of weeks ago in preparation for these listening tours. But the other reason was I wanted to know what conversations should we be having and what do I need to know as a superintendent about the school district. And so it was, again, very open-ended question, and I think as of today we have over 1,000 responses to that question. So what are people saying about what conversations we should be having and what I need to know as a superintendent? Well, some of the things that are rising to the top are, number one, compensation for our employees. And so I want to say very clearly to all employees who are here this evening that the board and me as a superintendent, we are committed to building a budget that honors you and values the hard work that you do every single day. So we're working very diligently to build a budget that provides you fair compensation. I can't guarantee that it's going to be able to offset inflation. I can't control that. But what I can control is that we can make very strategic decisions to make sure that our employees feel valued. Because I know that over the last 2 years, it's been a hardship on us all. Students, parents, and all employees in education. It's just been a rough road the last 2 years. So please know that we're working very strategically, very thoughtfully, and very intentionally to prepare a compensation package that's fair and that honors you. Class size. That is also something that has come up in the pre-listening question. At the secondary level, what that looks like is, when we build a schedule for a secondary teacher, they teach multiple sections of a course. And so they have what we call a class load because they have a total number of students that they teach throughout the day. And if that class load is between 150 and 180, it's manageable. Beyond 180, it becomes really difficult for teachers to keep up with all of the students and to provide the students the feedback that they need as part of the learning process. So that is critical for us to consider at the secondary level in terms of class load for our teachers. And then at the elementary level, you all need a manageable class size because, again, especially in the early years, our kids need a lot of feedback from the teacher to be able to master content. And when I ask students what they want from their teacher, What they tell me is, I want teachers who care about me. I want teachers who push me to be the best that I can be. I want teachers who are going to develop a relationship with me. So they want to feel a sense of care and compassion, and to really have, a cohesive culture of learning, a safe place for them to learn. Well, teachers can't do that when they have 35 kids in their class, right? It has to be a manageable class size for them to be able to build that positive culture of learning where kids feel safe. And where there's a give and take between the teacher and the students, and they're all working collectively together. So that's something that has come up. Curriculum and assessment. Like I said, assessment is a huge issue. I think we over-assess students. It's important for us to gather evidence of student learning, but it's important for us to be able to do that in a very authentic way, and in multiple different ways. Not always a multiple choice test that's in the same kind of a format that's preparing kids to take a standardized test. Sometimes it needs to be an exit ticket. Sometimes it just needs to be the teacher interacting with students. Sometimes it could be on a whiteboard with kids, showing what their responses are. Sometimes it could be that students are giving each other feedback, or they're self-assessing themselves. That's what I believe is authentic assessment, right? But not just a unit test or something that is consistently preparing, kids for STAR, because they need to understand, where they are in their learning, where they're going, and they need the tools to get there, right? And then safety and discipline. This is something that is very sensitive as well, because parents, I'm sure that when you drop your kids off at school, you put them on the bus, or if high school kids, as they're driving to school, whatever the case may be, when they're in school for the 7.5 hours that they're in school, your expectation is that they're safe while they're there, right? And so we want to make sure that we create environments in our schools where there's no bullying, that there's a sense of care and compassion, that students respect each other. And so safety is paramount. And, we want discipline practices that are restorative discipline practices, not discipline practices that are punitive, right? So safety and discipline has been a major issue that's come up in the pre-listening question. And then obviously we all want our kids to be college and career ready when they graduate. And then finally, food and nutrition. This is something that has come up quite a bit not only in the pre-listening responses, but even in some of my informal conversations with others. Food and nutrition is an issue for kids and an issue for parents. If children are hungry, because we feed them breakfast and we feed them lunch, but if they're hungry, they're not ready to learn. You know that, those of you who are teachers, you know that. When kids are hungry, they're not ready to learn, right? So food and nutrition is important. So the quality of food that we provide our students is important, right? Because number one, we want them to eat. We want them to have well-balanced meals. We want them to be nutritious, because wellness is important. So these are all of the things that I already know and that have come up in terms of challenges and issues and feedback that people have given me about things that are currently a problem in our system. And I share those two slides with you, what I already know and what people are telling me they're dissatisfied with the school district, because I want us to go back to hopes and dreams, and when we engage in this conversation, really engaging about what's possible, rather than swirling in everything that we don't like about the school district. Because although that's important information for me to know, I'm gathering that information through the pre-listening question, and I've gathered a lot of that, in meeting with people. But the better information for me and for the board, for us to truly begin to create those directional documents, is really about what's possible. What do we want in the future? What does that look like, sound like, feel like in El Paso ISD going forward? That gives me good information to create a plan of where we want to go and chart, a strategic plan for the next 5 years. So that's really where I really want us how I want us to engage. And so I want you to keep that in mind. So here we go. So every single one of you, get your technology ready. You've got a placemat at your table. And the placemat at your table has a QR code that you can use to get into the first thought exchange. And for our first thought exchange, I want you to think about this question. As you imagine the El Paso ISD of the future, what do you envision is possible for our students? What do you want the future of this district to look like, sound like, feel like? So get into your platform. If you need any help, raise your hand. I've got plenty of people that can help you get into the platform. Once you get in, you can choose whether you want to submit your information in English or in Spanish. If you feel more comfortable in Spanish, it will allow you to do that as well. So generate your thoughts and then begin to rate your thoughts. Those of you who are in the gallery, get your phones out. You can go to tjoin.com or you can use the QR code that's up on the screen, and you can begin engaging and sharing your thoughts with us as well. Those of you who are listening via live stream or watching via live stream, tjoin.com, and then use the QR code that's on the screen so that you can interject your thoughts as well. Remember, you're going to generate thoughts, and you're going to read thoughts, and you're going to rate thoughts.
Did you find the camera? To take pictures? Yes. Okay.
Okay. All right. Keep generating those thoughts, and don't forget to read other people's thoughts and rate those. So don't just put one thought in and put your phone down. Put the thoughts in. You can generate as many thoughts as you want. You need to read others' thoughts, and you need to rate them as well. Generating thoughts, and that's great. I also need you all to go in and read thoughts and rate them. Same for those of you in the gallery and those of you who are listening live stream at home. While you work, because I know I'm making you think real deeply. To read those thoughts and rate those. We've got about 100 thoughts generated, but we need to go in there and read and rate. Two more minutes to Continue adding thoughts, reading thoughts, and rating thoughts. Okay, you have about 1 more minute. Ten seconds. And then 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. If I could have everybody back and your attention up here. So I want to thank you all for the hard work and for going in to put in your thoughts, reading others' thoughts, and rating them. So let's look at some of the things that have kind of risen to the top. And as I said, anything that gets a rating of a 4 or higher is something for us to be thinking about and an important thought that is resonating with a lot of people. And so as I scroll through, as I was looking at some of the thoughts that were generated, I know that, when we think about education, it's not something that only happens in the school building. It's a collective partnership between the teacher, the parents, and the school, right? And so it's important for us to work in partnership so that there are some thoughts about parents and being supporters. There's also support for teachers and for them to help. Students, they want more support from you. There's also information about 21st century learning spaces, really wanting El Paso ISD to be the premier school district, levels of rigor in the classroom that really challenge students and help them to become problem solvers. So these are some of the thoughts that you all have generated as collective stakeholders here on the stage, those of you in the gallery, and those of you who are listening at home. So now's your opportunity to begin to kind of have a discussion at your table about some of the thoughts that were generated. What do you think about some of those thoughts? What's really resonating with you? What's really important? Because then I'm going to ask some of you to share out, and I'll ask you students to share out, I'll ask parents to share out, and so forth. So at this point, I want you to start talking at your tables. What did we talk about? What did you all discuss, or what are some of the thoughts that you all have about what's possible for El Paso ISD in the future? Discussion time at your tables. Neighbor and have some conversations about some of the thoughts that you all generated. Conversations at the dinner table. Give you about 1 more minute to discuss at your tables. To discuss at your tables. About 10 more seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. If I could have everybody's attention back here. All right, so who are my students in the house tonight? All right, so stand up and show me who you are. Stand up, students, show me who you are. Stay standing. Yes, it's, so you all are our customers. You're really the end user of this educational process and what we do as a school district. So share with us a little bit about some of the discussions at your table. So I want to hear from high school, I want to hear from middle school, and I want to hear from elementary. So who's going to be the courageous student that's going to start us off this evening? All right, here we go. So we need a microphone over here for this young lady. When you share, please let us know what your name is and what school you go to.
Hello, my name is Hazel Quintana. I go to Andress High School. One of the things that we talked about at our table was bus transportations. So, for example, students who are involved in extracurricular activities, clubs, sports, after-school music practices, we don't have bus transportations around like 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm. So that's if we want to. So let me kind of summarize, and thank you, Hazel. Let's give her a round of applause first of all. So I think that's an important piece, because some of the thoughts that we generated were we want a lot of opportunity, we want a lot of programming options for our children, But to do that, we need to make sure that we can bridge that gap of transportation if that's something that's inhibiting or prohibiting a student from being able to participate fully. So thank you for sharing that with us. That's really important for us to think about. Who else is going to share and be courageous? Right over here, this young lady. Tell us your name and what school you represent.
Hello, my name is Zoe Medina. I am representing Nixon Elementary.
Yay! Let's give her a round of applause. What can you share with us?
One thing we talked about at our table were hands-on academic learning. I think it would be more fun for everyone else, and they would get excited, and they would listen more because it's exciting for them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that, because that's really important. When we think about the classrooms of the future and what we want to see in classrooms across El Paso ISD in every classroom, what we want to see is very, cultures of learning in the classroom where students are engaged, where they have an opportunity to dialogue, where they have hands-on experiences, where they have, tasks that really challenge them and, in terms of problem solving. And I'll tell you what, when you have an engaging classroom, and teachers in the house know this, when you have an engaging classroom, you almost never have any discipline issues, in your classroom, because kids are having fun and they're engaged in the learning process. So thank you so much for sharing that. That is certainly what we want to see in the future in every classroom in El Paso ISD. All right, middle schoolers, where are you? All right, right here. Go ahead, tell us your name and where you're from.
My name is Pamela Coleman, and I am from Charles Middle School. Thank you. There's
Yay,
so much
thank you
stress
for
that I've
throwing her a
forgotten the name.
lifeline. No problem. It's a supportive environment here.
We put her into it.
All right, well,
Thank
she's
you
the
very
courageous
much.
one.
What we talked about at our table was the amount of salary that the teachers need, because they do need a better salary. I'll give it to them. They need
Yes.
a better salary.
All
but
right,
the problem
good job.
is that we don't have a very big budget now, do we?
No.
No, we don't. And probably a safer learning environment, probably from less judgment and bullying. I currently am not a victim of bullying, but I know it is a problem.
Absolutely.
So,
Well,
yes.
thank you so much. Two very, very important points. I do think, when you go into education, it's really a noble profession. It's a very tireless profession. We sink our hearts and souls into what we do, because what we do matters. We impact the futures of so many lives, and many times we don't get to see the fruits of our efforts, right? But we know that what we do, what we say, and how we interact with children every day matters. It does matter. And so, you can't put a price tag on that. And so again, the board and myself as a superintendent, we're committed to building a budget that really honors our teachers, but I'm gonna tell you, we can never pay you enough for the work that you do. But thank you for bringing that to the forefront. The other thing that she shared that's really important is that safety is critical for kids in the learning process. They need to feel safe in their learning spaces, whether it's in the classroom, whether they're eating in the lunchroom, whether they're walking in the hallways. No judgment, acceptance, bully-free zones. That's really, really important to our students. So social emotional supports, and really making sure that we're creating a culture in every school in El Paso ISD that is, a culture of care and compassion and respect. So thank you so much for sharing that. All right, I'm gonna take one more from a student right here, this young lady.
Hi, my name is Francesca Montero. I'm representing the sophomore class at Andress High School. One thing that we talked about here at my table, or something that I've had in my mind lately, is how much I enjoy coming to Andress. I love the environment, I love the teachers. I am a transfer student from the West Side, but I love the teachers, obviously, like I said, but the resources that we have really, they're not as helpful as they would be, like how I was used to in the West Side. But the teachers do a great job accommodating to that
Right.
because they do projects most of the time because I'm an IB student, and so it's most project-based learning.
But the facilities are a challenge.
The facilities are a challenge.
Right.
The furniture is a challenge, but most resources.
Absolutely. Well, that's very, very important, and I think that that is a thought that has really risen to the top when we think about not only Andress High School, but schools across El Paso ISD. Again, we need to modernize our learning spaces and make sure that we have the resources that really allow us to educate our children with 21st century learning spaces. So thank you, students. Let's give our students another round of applause. All right, my teachers in the house, I want my teachers to stand up and be recognized. Teachers, stand up. All right, teachers, like I said, this conversation is, I want to hear from each one of the stakeholders. So teachers, as you all were having conversations at your tables, what are some of the things that you can share out with us in terms of what's important for us to be thinking about when we think about the future of El Paso ISD? Who wants to be first? All right, right here. Please share your name. And if you want to share your school, great. If you don't, that's fine, but we would love it for you to share your school.
My name is Destiny Blanchett, and I am representing Tom Lee Elementary.
Yay!
So at our table, we discussed two important things. The first one was that we saw a lot of stuff on the food and lunch, which food quality is important, but also the amount of time that our students have to eat. I teach first grade, and by the time they get through the line and are wobbling to the table and unwrap all their stuff, they have about 10 minutes to eat. And so knowing that children take a lot longer to eat, I think that's something that we need to look into.
Absolutely.
The second thing was that we hope and envision that our board members will be more active in our classrooms. They come to our schools and they do walk-arounds, but they're not as engaged in the classroom as we would like. We loved when you came and we saw you interacting with the students and talking with the students, and we hope to have that from our board members as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. Two very important points. Again, our children need well-balanced meals, nutrition, but I think the time factor is really important because if we're having them scarf down their food, because having been a teacher and even now as a superintendent, if I get, I'm typically eating, either in the car or, at my desk but it's typically, let me get something quick so I can scarf it down. As adults, we learn to adapt. But with our students, they really need time to eat, digest, enjoy, and it's also social time for them. They need to be able to disengage from the pressure of the learning process because they're engaged in that all day long. So time is important. And I will tell you, in terms of board members, they are eager and ready to be in classrooms and to be more interactive and visible out on campuses. And so we're actually, we're doing a lot of training with the board. Together with them, in collaboration with them. And part of what we're doing is we're working on board operating procedures. And part of one section of our board operating procedures really has to do with campus visits. And so we're really wanting to kind of shift the culture and make sure that the doors of the campuses are open and that our board members feel comfortable walking in and engaging with students and engaging with teachers. So thank you so much. So I think that the feeling is mutual. So that's a good thing, right? All right, let me hear from 2 or 3 more teachers. Who else wants to kind of share? Right here.
Hi, my name is Juana Basavin. I'm representing Newman Elementary. So we discussed that. Thank you. So we were discussing at our table that the children want to explore. They don't want to just sit in front sitting at a table. They want to explore, but how can we do that if we don't have the budget?
Right.
We can't do that with tape and marshmallow and spaghetti. So, and in order to be, to be prepared to teach these children that are the future, we, the teachers, need to go to training for that technology.
Wonderful.
We need to be ready to teach these children for the future. So that was the main conversation, that we want these children to explore. How are we going to teach them to explore?
Exactly. Well, so 3 things that she shared. Number 1, we want classrooms where students are curious, where they're exploring, and where it's not just a sit and get, right? So that's great. The second thing is we need resources and funding to support, that type of teaching. And third, we need to make sure that we equip our teachers and build their capacity to be able to deliver instruction in that way. And they also need curriculum resources that really support that type of teaching. So thank you so much. Very, very important points. Let's give her a round of applause. Who else? I've heard from this side of the room. Can we hear from, yes, right over here.
Hi, hello. My name is Lizette Cedillo. I'm from Nixon Elementary. We have amazing teachers and kids and staff. I think what's really important for the future is to have partnerships with UTEP and community college for future teachers. I've been teaching for 13 years, and we always are learning on the job, especially if we're moved from grade level to different grade levels or schools. Professional development based on content knowledge is important. We need to know what we're teaching in science and social studies. We're learning with the kids. We're students ourselves. Every teacher feels like a student when we teach our classes. I think we need more bodies in the classroom, whether it's more paras. We need them to be paid well. Our paras are amazing. They want to be there with their kids. And we need student teachers in the classroom. We need to have conversations with UTEP, community college, get our high school students. We had that conversation. Any high school students that want to be future teachers, we need to get them in the elementary and middle schools and help us out. So,
well, thank you so much for those comments. So I'm going to kind of summarize a little bit what I heard as well. Yes, give her a round of applause, right? So, partnerships with UTEP and, El Paso Community College. As a matter of fact, today, I was with principals this morning. Principals were together they were learning this morning. And UTEP, the Dean of the College of Education from UTEP, was there, and they presented information about the residency program that we partner with UTEP on. And that residency program is really, students are, prospective teachers that are going into student teaching, they're residents now on some of our campuses. They're paid a stipend, and they get a lot of professional development and coaching from on-site coordinators that UTEP has hired. So it's a very different type of model, but it serves as a pipeline to train our teachers and to bring teachers into the profession. So that's one thing. So we do have a really good, strong partnership, but there's ways for us to strengthen that as well. And then I think just being a learning organization in general. So, and I think, I thank you for kind of sharing it in that way, that teachers learn every day. And so if we build a culture in our organization that we are a learning organization, and we're all learning each and every day because we don't know everything coming in, and understanding that it's okay to practice, it's okay to fail, because we learn from those things. Sometimes our most powerful learning lessons are from those experiences. So thank you so much. Okay, one more teacher. Do I have we heard from a high school teacher yet? I don't think so. So I think somebody pointed right here.
Well, it might have to be something we haven't discussed yet, but Hazel just whisper something about funding.
Yes.
So Ms. Tavares is a teacher at an elementary school, and she asked me about
I was
our
in her
tablet.
classroom. She's a wonderful teacher. We appreciate all of her hard work.
So at our school, we were purchased iPads and Apple Pencils. I'm still learning to use mine, but it should be something like that for all teachers. The comment was made about technology. in the old days, we didn't have these things. And if we can't teach our students, they're teaching us. If we can't explain because they know the technology better than we do, we're at a disadvantage. We lose their attention because they think, oh, my teacher doesn't know anything. And so funding is important to allow teachers to have this equipment simply to use it with our students, because that's how this generation is, they just use technology for everything.
Absolutely. So funding is very important, and we're a one-to-one school district, right? So that means that our students have the technology that they need to use. But that also requires training for our teachers and making sure that they truly understand how to integrate that technology into the classroom in a meaningful way, right? So I appreciate that funding, not only for technology resources, but just resources in general. That's a challenge that we have in education. But again, if we're thoughtful, strategic, and intentional, and we're investing in the right things, that really connect with the future that we want to see, then we can accomplish what we want to accomplish. So teachers, one more round of applause for our teachers. Thank you all so much. All right, so we're going to get back to business, all right? And I'm going to ask you to think just a little harder one more time. So we're going to dive into our second thought exchange, all right? So we've talked a lot about what's possible for the future of El Paso ISD. Now let's talk a little bit more about what are the things that we need to do. What are the actions that we need to take in order to make that future truly a possibility? All right? So that's the question that you're going to be thinking about and generating thoughts about. What are some things we need to address, actions that we need to take, things that we need to do to make the future that we've just talked about a reality? So you know what to do. Those of you in the gallery, take your phones out, use the QR code. Those of you who are watching live stream at home, type in your new QR code and let's start generating and rating new thoughts. You go in and start reading those and rating those. Few thoughts, go in there and read the thoughts of others and rate them. Maybe about 2 more minutes to go in, read thoughts and rate them. have about 1 more minute. About 15 seconds. All right, and 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm going to give you a little bit of an opportunity to discuss as well, but let's talk a little bit just real quick about some of the thoughts that are rising to the top. One of those has to do, changing our culture. We need to kind of shift our culture to a can-do culture. And, what's possible, and how hard are we willing to work, and are we willing to, roll up our sleeves and do whatever it takes to get there. So shifting from a culture of settling to, whatever it takes, right? I heard also, or I read also that, especially in the Andress feeder pattern, that there's equity issues in terms of facilities. And so when we think about long-term planning for our school district and facilities, we know that, a bond we're going to need to pass another bond in the future to really be able to accomplish that. I think that something else that I read was that if we're going to launch a new initiative, we need to stick to it, and we need to see it through. And we need to quit shifting and changing and starting and stopping. So there needs to be a level of consistency. Those are some of the things that I saw, rise to the top and that were rated fairly high by you all, and those of you in the gallery and those of you watching from home. So I'm going to give you about 3 to 4 minutes to discuss at your tables. Again, what is it that we need to do? What actions do we need to take to really make what we talked about was possible a reality? All right, so when we think about the future of El Paso, what are the actions that it's going to take to really realize that future? So talk amongst your tables. 30 seconds. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, parents. Where are my parents in the house? I need my parents to stand up and be recognized. All right, let's give parents a big round of applause. You know, I want to thank those of you who are here in the gallery, those of you who are here with me on the stage, and those of you watching live stream, because we couldn't educate your children without your partnership. So thank you so much for your investment this evening and for engaging in this conversation. So your voice is very important to me as a superintendent, to the board, and to the work that we're going to do in the future to make this school district, you know, the best in the state. So what can you tell us about some of the conversations that were had at your table in terms of what are some of the actions that we need to take to really realize that future? Yes, ma'am, right here. Our first taker. Tell us what your name is and where you're, who you're representing.
I'm Laurel. My daughter goes to H.E. Charles Middle School. She's a 7th grade cheerleader and in band. I'm a parent. I'm part of the CIT committee as well for H.E. Charles. The main concerns that we have at our table is a lot more security for our students. There's a lot of fighting going on, a lot of bullying. The other parent that was at our table said that she's not even sure if her kid's excited to go to school anymore. It's about other issues like drugs and pregnancy and who's doing this and who's doing that and fighting. And a lot of another issue is we need a lot more better communication with teachers. A lot of the teachers we have issues with, well, I know that some of them use Remind, some of them don't. And it's either a phone call or email, but a lot of times I don't get responses that way. I've had to tag an assistant principal email in with the teacher just to get a response about my students' grades. There's a lot of bullying.
So safety, security, and communication. Yes, well, I appreciate you sharing that. So safety, like I said, communication is important. You know, if we're going to be partners, there has to be two-way communication. So that's absolutely something that we can improve on. And you know, now with technology, we have so many other avenues to be able to communicate with each other. But you know, safety and security is an issue again, and it's not necessarily just discipline and security measures. It's really about creating a culture, like I said, of care and compassion, and making sure that we have the social emotional supports for our students so they understand how to manage that when they are faced with some of that behavior. So thank you for sharing that. All right, I'll hear from 2 more parents. What other parents want to share? Yes, right here. Manny, oh, here we go. Thank you. Share with us your name and what school you represent.
Okay, so my name is Valerie Gonzalez, and my daughters go to Tom Lee Elementary. Yay! Okay, so one of the big things we were talking about at our table was staffing. In terms of Tom Lee being over 800 students in population, but it gets staffing as an elementary school. So it's whatever every other elementary school gets, Tom Lee gets as well. And so an elementary school with 400 students versus 800, we need more counselors, we need another librarian, things of that nature. So our students aren't really getting what they need in comparison, and then creating some equity concerns.
Right, so equity is the key word there, right? And so when we think about staffing, you know, really looking at the needs of the campus, differentiating those needs and really addressing it from an equity lens. So thank you, that's very, very important. We appreciate that. All right, what else? We have another parent over here.
Hi, my name is Bobby. My daughter goes to Nolan Richardson. What we were discussing was the communication between the teachers to the students to the parents as far as grading. My daughter's prime example, she came home with a 10 after several weeks in math. when a teacher should be grading and they're not seeing the grades come in and they're waiting till the end of the 9 weeks to sit there and say something, and now we're rushing to try and figure out what's going on. Is my daughter not understanding it, or is she not submitting her assignments, but we're waiting till the last minute? There's something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be that communication between the parents, the teachers, and the students. And if the students have no answer for the teacher, then the teacher should be reaching out to the parents, saying, what's going on? Is there something at home, or what's the deal?
Absolutely. And so that is great. I mean, communication, there's a lot of things wrapped up in communication. So we talked about what are some of the things that I already know as a superintendent, and one of those was class size, right? So this is also, you know, I talked about feedback and class size being important so that teachers can give students feedback. But class size also, when you think about 150 to 180 students, or however many, you know, students you have in your class at the elementary level, you know, you've got to have manageable class loads, class sizes, so that you can have robust communication and connections, you know, from the home to the school environment. So very, very important, and absolutely something that we can improve on, and things that we, you know, need to commit to as we think about the future of El Paso ISD. So thank you so much, parents. Let's give them a round of applause for sharing. And so I have another group that I want to hear from. We've got a lot of community members that are here, and maybe people that we partner with in terms of support that we need to educate our children. And so something that's very important in the learning process is also drawing from the assets of the community. You know, I saw one of the thoughts was, you know, partnering with outside entities for after-school programming and things of that nature, before and after-school programming. So that's also an important part of the learning process, because we cannot do everything that we need to do for our children in 7.5 hours, or just within the confines of the school building. We, you know, there may be opportunities for before-school, you know, programming, and then after-school programming. So community members, stand up and be recognized. Yay, yay. All right. So who wants to be my courageous community member representative to share some of the things that you all talked about at your table? How about over here?
Hello. So one key point that resonated on our table a little bit ago was that it's really important as a whole that we need to find a way to increase the parent and community involvement to bridge the gap between home and school life for a lot of the students.
And I think that that really reinforces the communication piece as well, right? So opening our doors, being more collaborative, and really trying to bridge that gap between the home and the school. So thank you so much for sharing. I have one more stakeholder group that I really want to hear from, and that is those of you who are in the house that are non-teaching staff. Can you all stand and be recognized as well? Yes. So, so if you're non-teaching staff, that means that you might be a counselor, you might be a librarian, you might be, you know, a custodian, you might be a paraprofessional, whatever the case may be. So your voice is important in this conversation as well. So can I hear from a couple of you about what you had, you know, discussed at your table in terms of some of the actions that we need to take to make this future a possibility? Right over here.
Well, I'm sitting at an awesome table, and I've got a lot of teaching experience here. And the main thing that they want is we need to keep our teachers. This mass exodus that is going on across the country, it has to stop. But in order to stop all of these great teachers from leaving the profession, we've got to stop micromanaging them. We have to give them freedom to make the decisions in their classrooms. I'm not going to beat a dead horse over pay. Teachers have been underpaid since the beginning of time. They still are. Finally, now we're accepting it, acknowledging it, but it's just one of those things. Our teachers don't feel supported, and a lot of that is class size. Shame on EPISD this year. We had a chance to bridge a gap. You know, give our teachers a manageable class size, and we didn't do it. But it's not too late next year. We can still bridge this gap, but they can't do it with 25 and 26 kids who are 2 grade levels behind. To where I want to believe you, I do believe you, But we need to put our money where our mouth is on class sizes. If nothing else happens, if we don't get refrigerated air, we're going to survive. But we've got to teach these kids.
Right.
They are so far behind. And there's going to be a point where we're killing their spirit. You know, we know how behind our kids are, but they do too. And that's the heartbreaking part. And these teachers are working their butts off. And, you know, sir, I'm sorry that, you know, your teacher's not emailing you every night. That's because they're crying because they've got 17 kids in their class that are so far behind they don't know how to get them up to where they're supposed to be. They can't look at the data from the last test that they took because we're having to take another test, you know? It's disheartening because I grew up in EPISD. We were the cream of the crop, and it's sad to see where we're at now.
Well, we have an opportunity to change that.
Yes,
and
we
that's
do.
what the
And I
conversation
feel
is about
good.
tonight. So I really appreciate your feedback. And absolutely, there's a lot of work that we need to do. And some of that is culture building. What culture and what type of organization do we want to have? And absolutely, you know, I welcome accountability. I know that at the end of the day, it's my job. You all can have a seat. Yeah. It's my job to execute whatever plan that we come up with, whatever future we envision, whatever strategic plan we put in place. At the end of the day, it's my job to execute that. And to really, so I welcome accountability. You know, I love my job. I'm very passionate about what I do. And I truly believe that education is the opportunity equalizer. It changed the trajectory of my family. And that's why I stand before you here today and why I'm so passionate about making our district the best that it can be, because our children deserve it. And so hold me accountable. And we do have an opportunity before us. And it's going to be, and it's an opportunity that we all need to commit to, because it's not just going to be my responsibility. It's not just going to be the teacher's responsibility. It's not just going to be the student's responsibility or the community members' responsibility or the parents' responsibility. It's going to be a collective commitment that we all have to make for the future of our children. So I want to thank you all so much for engaging in this conversation with me this evening. I've received a lot of really good information from you. Again, what are the next steps and what are we going to do with this information? Well, the conversation is going to continue. This is the first of many conversations that we'll have. This same group of stakeholders, those of you who are in the gallery, I invite you to join us the next time that we meet. And bring your friends, because I'd love to have a full house, right? And those of you who are watching live stream, I hope that you'll continue to watch these conversations. So we're going to collect this information from all 10 of the feeder patterns. We're going to be able to determine what are some things that really span the entire school district, that are common across the school district. And then we're going to be able to differentiate what are some things that the Andress feeder pattern said that are different from the Bowie feeder pattern, so that we can begin to differentiate our strategies. But we're going to bring back those directional documents that I talked to you about at the beginning of this conversation. Our mission, why we exist, our vision, what we hope to become, our core beliefs and commitments, what do we value as an organization, and then board goals. And I'm going to want your feedback. And then the next part is going to be, when we finalize those directional documents, we're going to begin to develop a strategic plan with strategies. And again, I'm going to bring it back. So are we on the right track? Did we capture what you shared? Is this the future that we want? And if it is, are these strategies going to get us there, right? And so that's going to take some time for us to do. So what I would tell you is, as we go into the 22-23 school year, there's going to be some opportunities that we can capitalize on. But as we do this work, it's going to take us some time. So critical is going to be 23-24, because that's where we're going to see, you know, some big movement as we go forward. So I need you to hang with me. I need you to commit to this process. And I promise that we'll come back to you and that we'll continue this conversation, because again, it's a collective commitment from all of us. And I'll end with this. The only way to control the future is to create it. And we've started that today. So thank you so much for engaging in this conversation with me.
Ms. Saavedra, on behalf
sir.
of the Andress Feeder Pattern, we'd like to thank you for creating this venue of opportunity to help us create our dreams and our hopes. And on behalf of that, we have a little token of appreciation
for you. Thank you so much. This is so awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate you. And it's just, like I said, it's a joy and an honor to be with you all this evening. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the people that really helped us put this on for you this evening and made this possible. And so those of you who are part of the community engagement department, IT department, fine arts department, it's taken a collective effort for everyone to put this on. So I really appreciate all that you do. You see all this technology that we're making use of, so thank you so much. I also want our school administrators to stand and be recognized because I asked, let's give them a round of applause. I asked two things of our principals. I said, I need you to identify your stakeholders and get them there, and then I need you to show up and just listen and learn. And so they've done a stellar job, so I really thank you all for being here this evening. And we also have the executive cabinet here, my executive cabinet as a superintendent, and they've been the ones that have been walking the microphones to you. When you raise your hand, they've come to help you get into your technology, so I want to thank them because I've also asked them to come to each one of these listening sessions, and I heard some thoughts up there that we need to hear what the plight of the campus is like. And so they're here to listen and learn as well. So thank you all for supporting me and for being here to listen and learn from the community. And here in the gallery, thank you all so much for being here as well. Like I said, I appreciate everybody's involvement this evening. And take your Chick-fil-A boxes with you. Enjoy your dinners, and I hope to see you soon. Your iPads, if you checked out an iPad, leave it at your